Today's episode is brought to you by 9centprinting.com. With over 100 five-star reviews, 9centprinting.com is ready to meet all your printing needs. Are you a church plant or small church with no copy machine? No problem. 9cent Printing has you covered. If you need bulletins, flyers, books, cards, offering envelopes, posters, they do it all. I know the Christian owners of this business personally, and I'm not just a fan, I'm also a customer. Fast, nationwide shipping, affordable, professional, wow printing at wow prices. Check them out at 9centprinting.com. Welcome to the Small Town Pastor Podcast. This podcast is a ministry of Small Town Network. We exist to make disciples, train pastors, and plant churches in smaller communities. My name is Eric Nielsen, and I'm joined by my co-host, Tony Colomb. Not Tony Colomb. I read the script. Tony's gone again. Chris is stepping in. Chris Getz from Garnett, Kansas, and we're joined again today by Ben Smith of Lapine, Oregon. So we left off talking about kind of succession and I want to contextualize this because we all kind of live in smaller communities. Chris, you were telling me a while ago, you're very close to Ozark Christian College, and you're coming up on 20 years here in a little bit of ministry in Garnett, Kansas. And you found it really difficult to hire staff to come out to Garnett. Do you want to just comment on like why you think it's hard to hire staff to come out and work at your growing church in Garnett, Kansas?
We live in the middle of nowhere. There's no amenities. We've got a few restaurants, some good restaurants, good food.
I've been to a fantastic restaurant in Garnett.
We do. We're blessed. The truth is, I really just think most of the younger folks, I mean, there's so many opportunities available. There are so many ministry outlets open right now. It's really a competition around here. Ozark only graduates so many people, and Boise only so many people. And right now the list is really long on people looking for pastors. And so I mean, it feels very much like I'm competing, trying to get somebody to come to Garnett. And so it's hard to get them.
Small rural areas are not everybody's cup of tea, which is okay. People have different likes and, contexts that they enjoy working in. Ben, as we've kind of talked about in your last episode, you've kind of been a small town guy. I mean, Corbett, Oregon is a small community. The Dalles is a small community. Eagle is a small community, albeit bumped up against, a metropolis,
Yeah.
Boise. And then now you found yourself at Lapine, which is a few thousand people. Have you found that like in smaller communities, it's hard, just kind of speaking generally, you don't have to, if it applies to your church or not, but is it hard for small communities to draw like pastors to come out and serve in their rural, communities like that?
Yeah, no question. Yeah, I think um, you know, probably as all of us were, and maybe some of us still are kind of drawn to the buzz of a bigger city in a larger church context. And so, the saying bigger is better doesn't die easily. And so we sometimes assume that if you're in a bigger church, that there's better things happening, which is not always true. I think there's some things that big churches do well, and then there's things that small churches do well. I think you both have their strengths. So, but it's hard to get people to move to a place like Lapine. In fact, the story of when, if you were in the last episode, if you listened to the last episode, we talked about the OCEF and the revitalization project here. They brought in Terry O'Casey, but they'd interviewed several people. Some had decided to come and actually visit town and meet with the leadership team, and one of them didn't show up to the interview because they drove into town
No way.
and literally drove right out the other side of town and said, heck with this, I'm not moving there. Like they didn't even show up to the meeting with the leadership team because it was like, this is literally the sticks and we are not moving here. And so yeah,
That's hilarious.
that's how it is. Well, and when I hired an associate, I called all the people that, professors and all my networks told me to call, and I called, and half of them wouldn't even call me back. And these are people they're not even graduated Bible college yet. I'm like, I'm giving you an opportunity for a killer position. not just for to have a job, but to be mentored in ministry and be a part of a thriving ministry in a rural community. And boy, they just wouldn't even give me a second look. So yeah, it's tough.
So, what do you think, as guys, both of you, I'd love both of you to answer this, as guys who have settled into small communities long term, what do you like about it? What's the appeal?
You or me, boss.
Go for it.
I'll be honest with you. I love rural America. I don't have to deal with traffic. We have two stop. I can avoid them both if I want to. And then when it comes to the people, oh man, the people are, it feels a little ingrown sometimes. But the truth is, if there's a need, our community partners together like I've never seen happen in a big city or any city for that matter. I mean, just small town America. We all know each other. We all know each other's business, and and we care about each other, even though sometimes they might gossip about each other. They still love each other.
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say amen to all that. That's to me. I mean, I so when I said I went to church in the Dalles, but I never lived in the Dalles.
Oh, sorry.
I I lived in Doofer.
Oh, that's even smaller.
It's and I didn't even live in Doofer. I lived 12 miles out of Doofer on
Outside.
40 acres. So
Oh,
like
nice.
like our nearest neighbors had thousands of acres. Well, not our nearest neighbors, but a lot of our nearest neighbors did have thousands of acres. These are wheat and cattle farmers, and so like that's where I grew up. Like Boise's great, but it was not like it was culture shock for me. Like I'd never lived in a city before. So it's just part of who I am, I like the smaller town atmosphere. Um, so I will say coming back to Lapine though, after being in Boise for 7 years, in the Boise area for 7 years, you see small town differently after you've
Okay.
lived in a bigger city. I
Mm,
will say that. And so it definitely does not have the hype and the buzz of a bigger town and a bigger church. It does it, and by buzz, I mean it doesn't have a spirit of optimism.
Mm,
Um, uh, like a bigger city has, where there's lots of financial opportunity and entrepreneurship happening and things like that. So, yeah, especially because when I got here in October of '07. And if you remember back in October of '07, what was happening to the stock market,
oh yeah.
um, it was going off a cliff.
mm,
And, half the people in our church that were my age had to move away because they
mm,
couldn't live here. There was no work because they're all construction workers and
yeah.
blue collar people, and they couldn't make a living here anymore. The housing market tanked. They
Mm,
stopped building houses, stopped developing subdivisions.
yeah.
It was rough, man. There was a lot of depression. There's a lot of darkness. So, but the question wasn't the question was, what do I love about it? I love small town. I
Mhm.
love the fact that you know everybody and everybody knows you, and I love the fact that there's outdoor recreational opportunities right here. I don't have to go far for that, hunting
Mhm.
and fishing and getting out in the woods and stuff. So I love that. So
We've got an opportunity right now with the church. Small Town Network is talking with the church about doing a revitalization, and it's in a town of about 5,000, but it's literally just, out here in the desert. And one of the big challenges is like how do we find a guy that wants to come out and pastor a church in a small town
Mhm.
where he's going to be seen as an outsider probably to start, um, and to do kind of a turnaround work,
mm,
um, and they don't grow on trees. We're not just looking for a pastor. We're looking for a pastor that can turn a church around. So it's a specific kind and caliber of person, and then in this, remote location, man, it's challenging, and
mm,
there's a lot of churches as we do this podcast and as we travel around and talk to people in smaller communities. There's a lot of churches that don't have leaders, um, and no
Mhm.
prospects, and it's like it was interesting. We were a part of a conversation with the Bible College here a while ago, and it was kind of a roundtable discussion with a lot of pastors, and I was kind of discouraged a little bit, not at the college for doing anything wrong or any particular person, but there was kind of this spirit of like people. I don't know how to say it. It was almost like we were whining, that like there's supposed to be people out there that are generating quality leaders so that we can hire them. That was kind of like and I was kind of feeling increasingly annoyed through the conversation. It was a couple day kind of thing. And I didn't say anything. Which is rare for me. I was just keeping my mouth shut. I was like, I'm going to be quiet and just listen and try to learn. And the second day toward the end, I just said, the theme here, guys, is that um, we're all kind of decrying the lack um, of leaders and, pastors and stuff for our churches, um, because we've kind of outsourced our responsibility as congregations
Mm.
to make disciples and train up pastors and even hopefully someday, plant new expressions of church from our churches. So we've outsourced our responsibility. And
Mm.
so that brings us back to kind of what we were talking about. Terry O'Casey took on this turnaround church, and Terry deeply loved that church. But I remember early on, I remember him at an OCF board meeting saying, this has been so hard. He said that I almost gave up on Jesus because of the way some of his people have been treating me. I remember him saying
Mm.
that.
Mm.
And I'm like a young dude, and I was like, and this is guy people that don't know, Terry O'Casey's like a legend. Like all of like the young pastors in Oregon were mentored by Terry. Um, and that just drives the point. Like I remember in McMinnville when he was at Seaside, he
Mm.
grabbed like 4 or 5 of us young preachers and had us come out once a month, and he discipled us in preaching and leading churches. Didn't have to. Not there's no one nobody put him up to it. He's just an older guy, and there's a bunch of us young preachers, and he's like, I'm just going to mentor these guys. I unfortunately had to attend his funeral because he got cancer and died very young, and heard the best funeral message I've ever heard in my entire life, given
Mm.
by Ben Smith on the screen. Um, Ben, I'm telling you, brother, I know you're modest and you'll just deflect the praise, and that's fine, but that was the best sermon I've ever heard at a funeral. And you had great material to work with because obviously Terry, a fantastic guy.
I can't take credit for that, man. What can I say?
It was so good. It was so good.
You're right. Terry's life was rich with funeral material, so I'll just put it that way.
He was such a character.
He was.
We almost need to do like a full episode, like, about Terry O'Casey and like the exploits thereof. Um,
Well,
so,
yeah, 100%.
so talk about what the process was like to be kind of mentored by a guy that's kind of a legendary mentor. What did he do as you kind of reflect on your time with him? What did he do for you and like pour into you as a young leader?
Hmm. I look at Jesus' model was come do life with me, right? Was really like, here's these 12 young guys, and pretty much did everything with Jesus for 3 years, as far as we know. Um, and I wouldn't say that it was quite like that with Terry, but it was a lot of it was just, we're going to go do this together.
Mm.
And I think one of the things that churches miss out on is we're trying so hard to maximize our ministry that we think it's a waste to send two pastors out to a call,
Mm,
um, and or to have two pastors working on something that one pastor could do.
mm,
And unfortunately, that's the cost of discipleship right there. The
Mm.
cost of discipleship is asking two guys to do what one guy could technically do by himself, and probably faster. Honestly, he could do it faster, but it was just um, so much of what I learned from him was caught, not taught.
mm,
So it was just doing ministry with him, alongside of him, watching him interact with people, going on to the hospice calls with him,
Mm.
which was terrifying at first. Never been on a hospice call in my life before I came here, because I was in youth ministry, right?
yeah.
You don't have too many hospice calls in youth ministry. So Yeah, so you know, just going and doing those things with him. And I think as churches, we need a mindset shift that says, listen, if we don't take young people on these sorts of things,
Mhm.
we can't expect them to have any idea what to do with it,
Yeah.
when they get there, because eventually they will be the guy, and when they are, they're not going to have any idea what the heck to do because they don't train you for that in Bible college.
Mhm.
I mean, they may give you a couple of guidelines, but it's not you're not going to do that. So,
That's funny,
um,
man. I was just like, I
but
was went and visited this old lady at the hospital, and she's got terminal cancer. And I had sent one of my young guys over like the week before. She's been there for a while, and I said, "Oh, how did so and so do?" And she goes, "Oh, he did fine. He was very nice, but I think he was a little nervous." And I'm like, "Yeah,
yeah,
I think he was too." You don't know what to do until someone kind of shows you. But go ahead, you're good.
right,
Mhm.
yeah. No, I just that was a lot of it with Terry was that, and there'd be tidbits along the way, obviously, um, things that I learned from him. There are Terryisms that we still use in our church today. In fact, they show up in our staff meetings, they show up in our elders meetings. There's Terryisms, and they permeate because it becomes part of the DNA of the church. And the heritage of the church is some of the things he used to say. Lower than a bat's bottom in a wagon track. That was his that was his phrase for depression. You ever have one of those days when you're lower than a bat's bottom in a wagon track? I used that in a sermon a couple of weeks ago, and people just started laughing. Just he'd always say, "Celebrate the wins," so or count the living. That's what he would say. Count the living. It was his way of saying, count the living, not the dead. So when we talk in staff meeting, it's easy to go immediately to the what we call the tune-ups, like things that need to change, instead of saying, no, what's going right, what's going well. And so, keeping that, because there's always going to be good and bad that's happening in the church. And then they happen at the same time. And you have to choose as a pastor, like, what am I going to make my focus? Am I going to make it the garbage, like the stuff that you wish you didn't have to deal with, or are you going to make it to things that give you energy and remind you of why you do what you do? So,
Kind of the go with
um,
the goers kind of mentality.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly,
So
yeah.
now,
So,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
nope, I'm good. So,
So as I visited your church, my parents had like a vacation home near you. So over the years, I popped in, and I've noticed a couple of times I visited, someone else has been preaching, and it
mhm,
seems like you've kind of embraced that idea of like mentoring other people. When I was there last time, I believe it was like your father-in-law was preaching or something.
mhm.
So
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
something that you guys have kind of baked into your guys' plan? Is that we're trying to empower and raise up other leaders? And like, can you speak to that for a minute?
Yeah, I think you gotta let other people preach. I don't want to say you gotta let them fail. I mean, you do have to let them um you know you have to let them struggle a little bit because it's not going to be polished the first time or the fifth time. Definitely it's going to be it's not going to be to the same quality. But I think helping the congregation understand that we're about training up new leaders, and so whenever that person gets off the stage, most of the time I get up and do some sort of whether it's an altar call or whatever it is, do some sort of recap of
Mhm.
like, hey, let's give that person a hand. This is what we're about. And it
Mhm.
may not be, it's not going to sound like me, it's not going to, it's not necessarily going to, you know, it's not going to be what you're used to, but that doesn't mean that the Holy Spirit's not in it. Doesn't mean that God's not using it. And so, um,
That's the
but
power you have as the lead guy to kind of get up and frame. Like, I think that's I said this to a guy, one of our worship leaders, this great guy, and he had this awesome idea of like having some high school kids lead worship on Sunday. It's like that's a great idea. The only problem was he didn't tell me. And so I just walk into church on Sunday morning, and then it's like time to start. And there's these two high school kids, and they didn't say anything. They just like started playing the guitar and singing. They were looking at their feet the whole time. I mean, they're great kids, and like, but no one said anything. And I'm like, the only criticism I had was, I go, hey man, if you'd have run that by me, I would have said, great idea, and then I would have had you frame it. and say, hey
Hmm.
guys, I don't know if you've noticed, we've got some like really talented high school kids, and they were super talented. And I thought, why not give them a shot at leading worship today? And so we're going to do that. Isn't that cool? Just frame it. Um,
Hmm.
and that changes the expectations that people have. But it also reinforces to the church that we're a church that's not that's going to give people opportunities. We're going to raise people up and give them a shot to do important things. And it's not just going to be controlled by a small, select group of people that only get to do the important stuff on the stage or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like just kind of like
Absolutely.
that framing. So, for the sake of our time, I want to shift a little bit because you guys are doing something, and I know you would not take credit for this. It's your team, it's the Lord, it's all that. But there's obviously some intentionality that's gone into doing what you do. And you guys are, and Chris, by the way, also, you guys both have good sized churches in small communities. I mean, I don't know what you guys run, but I think it's over 500. And you're in a town of a couple thousand people. What has been some of the things that you guys have seen over your tenure, um, that and done on purpose that you feel like has contributed to the health and growth of High Lakes Christian Church?
Mm.
Because that's an anomaly, right? To have like a church like that in a town like that.
Well, you're right. I can't take credit for any of it. Um, in fact, when I've been asked by other churches to come revitalize their church, or to take a position, my response has often been, I'm actually afraid to, because I don't think I'll have the same success because I don't have the same team. I won't have the same team. Like these people that I'm surrounded by, they have poured their life into this too, and it's a lot of their creative ideas that have helped this church become what it is. But one of the best things I ever did was hire, and I think this is true of every good uh, preacher, is you hire people that are way more talented than you are. You know, if you can find people that are more talented than you are, and you can somehow convince them to come work with you, dude, you've that's half the battle right there. Um, and so that's my uh in the first couple years I was here, we lost um well, in the first 5 years I was here, we lost two of our pastoral staff members, my other two staff members, and I had to hire those two positions.
Mhm.
And one of the guys I hired was um he's absolutely phenomenal, and he's a great worship leader. He's multi-talented. We actually hired him as a youth leader. He's now my associate, and he's really good with tech. Those things are just that's invaluable, especially for an old fart like me. I don't, I'm not good with all that stuff, but he is. And so, I don't think technology is the key to church growth, but I think that it really helps it, you know, it really helps it. Have somebody that knows that stuff and isn't afraid of it. And so that's been huge. The other thing is we've tried to maintain a small town vibe.
Mm.
We want to capture the beauty of small town, but have church not have the church or the worship experience part of of Sunday morning not feel small town.
Mm.
I know that sounds counterintuitive, but we want to have that everybody knows everybody. We have fun in the lobby and we
Mhm.
talk and stuff. But when you walk into the worship center, you go, "Huh, there's some modernness to it. Um, we use good lighting, we use good sound system. Our room sounds good, and our worship team is unbelievably talented, for the size of town that we are, those kinds of things. And so, you know, um, yeah, hiring the right people to be able to make the worship experience not feel small town, but the
Mm.
vibe of the church feel small town.
Mhm.
And so I think that's one of the comments we get a lot is, man, this is like the friendliest church we've ever been to, and we were shocked at how how quality um, you know the experience was. So
I think
um,
that's important. I've heard all these stories of like, we graduated this, we hired this graduate from the Bible college, from a Bible college, young guy. It's usually more like there's a young guy, and he came and he tried to like, impose like the culture of, where he came from into
Mhm.
our little church, and he didn't read the context. And I
Mhm.
think people mistake small town with done poorly. And I hear you saying like, hey, we can keep the identity of our people and still do things well.
mhm.
I think people appreciate things that are done well, like regardless of the size of community. But I remember like when I was a youth, I think it was when I was a youth pastor, that song came out, The Church of the City, and it'd go, "We're the church of the city." And it's like every small town youth pastor in America was singing Church of the City in their, youth group in a town of a couple thousand. And it's like, you're not the church of the city. You're the church of like the rural small town
Great.
America, right? And it was just kind of like me. I never said anything, but it just made me laugh, like to have people sing this ridiculous song, like about, it's probably like for a church in Melbourne or New York or something. You know, we're doing it in Newford, right?
Dude,
So
you should 100% change the lyrics to that, dude.
yeah,
The church
yeah.
of the backwoods
There you
rednecks.
go. We could like
Throw
add
in
the
a few banjos.
banjo.
Throw
I
in a
got
few
the banjo right back
banjos.
there. Yeah, we could do it. So,
Yeah.
so I think like embracing like your culture, and then I suspect, Ben, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would you say that like staying for the long term has been part of the success? Like just
Yeah.
staying and like continuing. Because how long have you been there?
I'll be 19 years in October. Um,
Okay.
so, but not all of that has been as the preaching pastor.
Yeah, I
Be
understand.
like 11 or 12 as the preaching pastor. Um, and I think, yeah, I appreciate you kind of bringing those things to my memory, because that's probably there's two other things I would say about that. Number one is, yeah, longevity. And our church we didn't become who we are overnight. Like, we made incremental changes over many, many, many years, and to be who we are now. And so longevity is huge, like especially in a small town, because no people in small towns distrust outsiders inherently. Just every small town I've ever been in, and they distrust people who are from big towns or from, in our case, like California. I'm sorry, but that's just the reality.
I
Like,
live in Idaho.
California is like a four-letter word to people in La Pine, like, because
East
there's been a
East
mass
Oregonians.
migration.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, because there's been a mass migration, and
Yeah.
it has changed our small towns in a lot of these beautiful rural towns in Central Oregon. So that's uh, so to know that you're from a rural small town in Oregon and you're coming in as that, automatically gives you some some credibility. And
Credibility.
so that and longevity.
Mhm.
Um, I think, and longevity is tied partly to, that your personality and who you are fits the culture of where you're now serving. Um, you know, and one of the things that for us has been huge, and I can't say I would make the same decision today, but our kids being involved in the public school system here in our small town.
Yeah.
Yes, it might not be always the quality of a private school,
Mhm.
if you even have that option in your town, but the relationships and the networking and the really being seen as one of us, right? That is unbelievably valuable. So, longevity, community involvement, not
Mhm.
just in the church, but outside the walls of the church and in the social life of the community. And then we've maintained kind of part of a small church feel by saying, like, hey, every newcomer that comes through the door and makes themselves known to us, we sit down and we call them our muggings. I learned this at Eagle. I don't take credit for it, but I'm sure it's not unique to them either. They probably stole it from Willow Creek or somewhere like that. But we would do these muggings, and so Monday muggings. So if you're a first timer to the church, you fill out a card, you get a phone call, and we set up. It's not always on Mondays, but it rhymes. So we would sit down with that new couple or family or individual, and we would have a you know, where are you from? How you doing? How can we help you plug in? What do you love about the church? What do you hope to experience here? Here's who I am. Here's, my family, just and so as staff, we sit down and do that with every person. It used to be we'd go out to their homes. We still do that sometimes if they're willing. But it's sometimes a little bit less intimidating if they come to the building and sit down with us in the conference
I feel
room.
like times
So,
have changed a little bit on that. Like
Mm.
I remember early on, like in our first church plant, we would go to people's houses, that on Monday we do a
Mhm.
fresh loaf of sourdough bread and
oh, heck
knock on
yeah.
the door and hey, I'm that guy from that church and we just wanted to give you this and thank you for I feel like people don't like that as much anymore. They're not as receptive to that. And to be really honest about it, I don't like that. I don't like people knocking on my door and it's like more of like email me and we'll set something up at a coffee shop or so
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, both of you, again, both of you have stayed a long time in your roles. There is like a correlation between like after 7 years, there's studies that have shown like after 7 years of being in a church, your impact goes up. The ministry usually gains a lot more traction and usually grows significantly after the 7 year mark. You guys are both living proof of that. I think you both, I know Chris personally is very vested in his community. I saw him nodding his head vigorously about the kids being involved in the public schools. I know his wife's been part of the teaching in the public schools, and a lot of that just digging into the community, loving your community, not
Mhm.
trying to make your community or your church, different than the community it's located in. All that stuff is probably um, important. And then obviously, the blessing of the Lord. And we
Mhm.
don't ever want to take that away from like the building of the church. We know that Christ said he built his church and we obviously want to give him the credit for it. So, Ben, if people want to find out more about your ministry, what's your guys' website?
Yeah, we're just at High Lakes CC for Christian Church, highlakecc.org.
Okay.
And
Highlights.
we got our services are on YouTube and Facebook every week and that kind of thing. So we have a presence there, although it's small, but most of our audience is here in the building.
Yeah, man. I get it.
But yeah, so
Well,
yeah, it's pretty
brother, I
cool.
want to thank you for coming on. It's been great seeing you and having you on and just talking shop. I was telling Chris before you jumped on, I just think of this as like having a cup of coffee with a guy and maybe, and we record it, maybe a few people listen, but
Heck
it's
yeah.
encouraging to me as the, guys kind of trying to champion small town church planting that we have a lot of vibrant and healthy churches in small communities and
Hmm.
unfortunately, people don't always know about them. They're not the ones
Yeah.
that get the press. So if we can do something to kind of shine the light on things that are going well in small towns and small churches,
Yeah.
we want to do that. So thank you for
Yeah. Yeah. I think one more plug for small
sure.
town
Yeah.
ministry is the quality of life for
Mm.
you as a pastor is so
Wonderful.
good. It's so good. You're invested in the fabric of the community. You're tied in relationally and socially with the people around you. You have the outdoor recreation opportunities in most cases are right at your front door. You have people of like-mindedness that want to go do those things with you. I
Mhm.
mean, it's just it really is. The big cities and the big churches get all the press, but small town is the biggest secret in ministry. I think I love it. So
I love it, man.
that's not to say I'd never serve in a bigger city,
Yeah.
but the Lord would have to absolutely um, pick me up by the scruff of the neck and force me there because it's not quite as natural for me. So
I
I'm
get it.
absolutely 100% in agreement with that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, bless you guys both. For everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. Be sure and check out our sponsors at 9centprinting.com. If you like what we're doing, please like or subscribe wherever you watch or listen. And if you're interested in Small Town Network, you can find us online at smalltownnetwork.com. You've been listening to the Small Town Pastor Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by 9centprinting.com. With over 100 5-star reviews, 9centprinting.com is ready to meet all your printing needs. Are you a church plant or a small church with no copy machine? No problem. 9 Cent Printing has you covered. If you need bulletins, flyers, books, cards, offering envelopes, posters, they do it all. I know the Christian owners of this business personally, and I'm not just a fan, I'm also a customer. Fast, nationwide shipping, affordable, professional, wow printing at wow prices. Check them out at 9centprinting.com.